Hello, everybody. This is James Diboe, Discovering, dedicated to original peoples. As always, we've got a special guest on. This is going to be part two. Maika Moroca, how you doing, my brother?
Good morning, James, and good morning to all the listeners and viewers this morning.
Thank you very much. Anyway, how's the weather down in the Fiji Islands? Anyway, how's the weather today?
Well, certain parts of Fiji, it's drizzling. When I came in this morning, the weather isn't quite fine. It's a little cloudy, and well, as of yesterday of last evening, areas close to the city to Suva was quite flooded. So yeah, the weather is cloudy, drizzling,
Wow.
and that's it. Yeah.
Right. Now, funny enough, you mentioned about the weather. I mean, I've been to Fiji twice. I came one time in April and I came one time in September. September, the weather was amazing. April, it was okay, but it wasn't like as hot as it was in September. Now, I always try to avoid cyclone season.
Cyclone season is from November to April the following year.
Right,
So
okay.
we are getting, now we have just gone out of the cyclone season, which
Okay.
ended in, And because of the climatic change, the climatic condition, the change in climatic condition, we are still experiencing, the kind of weather that we experienced during the cyclone season, and that's why it's flooding, and I think that's an impact of climate change.
Yeah. So I think I don't know, it was a few years ago. There was a serious cyclone there, damages the properties, and I've seen quite a few on the news. Now, because these have happened for many years, and how are you prepared? Your government prepared for these kind of catastrophes that happen?
Well, Fiji's disaster management is well looked after by the National Disaster Management Office.
Yeah.
And there has been tremendous training and awareness, advocacy on preparedness for any kind of natural disaster.
Okay.
And we have been into that over the years, ages ago. I think we have our system in Fiji is very much aligned to the global village, the way, the approach that's expected by the global village. And we're doing well. We're doing well in that. The hurricane that struck Fiji way back in 1992, 93, which was Cyclone Kina, and the 2016 Cyclone Winston. These were learning ground for the citizens of Fiji. And luckily, the Cyclone Winston in 2016 did not strike the capital city. If he had struck the capital city, would have been more suffering, because the capital cities were a place where there are more number of informal settlements. We call it here in simple English as squatter settlements. It's informal settlement, merely refers to informal settlement. So we have the largest number here in Suva City. So we're so fortunate that God chose other areas of Fiji and not Suva City, but we do not know what the future holds for us in terms of natural disasters. That was Winston of 2016. Tropical cyclone Winston of 2016 was category 5, I believe, cyclone. I stand to be corrected. But then hopefully all the buildings that have been built afterwards have gone up to that standard or above category 5 engineering plans. But in terms of your question, James, with regards to how prepared we are in terms of natural disasters, I think Fiji is one of the countries in the South Pacific that is up to par with the standards required in terms of preparation for natural disasters.
Great, good to hear that anyway. Now, I know a while ago there was a tsunami that hit Tonga right next door. Did you feel the tremors with you only being so far away? Because that was quite a bad tsunami in Tonga.
Well, there were, there was a little continuous rain and all, probably connected to that. I don't really know because I'm not a weather person.
Yeah.
But yes, during that period, Fiji had experienced some kind of climatic changes, and I think it's probably connected to that.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, well, it was interesting our discussion on part 1. You know, we were speaking about the connections with Africa come from Lake Tanganyika, the shared cultures, spirituality. Also, we were speaking on the connection of Melanesia itself. We spoke about blackbirding, which was going on, where some people were brought from the Solomon Islands into slavery, took to the Fiji Islands. We spoke on the Indians, when the indentured labor, up to where we are today. So, let's broaden the discussion out a bit more. Let's deal with the curriculum. Now, I believe that the curriculum is changing, like you said. So when we say changing, let's start from the older curriculum and then we can move into the new curriculum. So dealing with the old curriculum, are we dealing with the British curriculum?
Well, James, you have just chosen a topic that is so close to my chest, because I'm a teacher by profession. Yes, when we had a curriculum that was developed by our European colonizers. It was a blend of the British and New Zealand curriculum, because of the trend in which the education system came into Fiji. We had the university entrance, which was British.
Yeah.
This was long, the period before independence and a little after independence. And we have the New Zealand School Certificate, which was New Zealand. These are in Fiji, we call the levels year 13 and year 12. In some places it's Form 6 and Form 7, right?
Yeah.
I would know back home there in the UK, what do we call the classes, the levels in the schools?
Yeah, so when you're in your last year in senior school or secondary school, usually it is year 11. Now, when you stay on the sixth form, you do the 2 years, you could call it year 12, year 13. I didn't do the sixth form, so I'm not too familiar. But yeah, anyway, yeah.
Right. So university entrance back those years before and after independence had much influence of the British Empire, the British education system. But there were high-level education, there were high-level examinations, and those that had passed through those exams, had set the curriculum that was a blend of New Zealand and British curriculum. Those that set those exams, and they did quite well. We had good writers. We had people who could think outside the box. We had people who could negotiate and handle situations. That is, when we look back, we see them with so much admiration, because they went through such a system. And then the New Zealand school certificate was
Picking up a little bit, but hopefully it comes back on now. Yeah, so like you were saying, we got technical difficulties before. We're speaking about the curriculum.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a blend of the British and New Zealand, and this was evident with the university entrance that was British made, and the New Zealand school certificate, which was New Zealand made. And these were both examinations prepared based on their curriculum that was used here in Fiji. And then after independence, when we were able to look after our own affairs in terms of development, in terms of other aspects of development in Fiji, including the education sector, the leaders had decided that we had to have our own curriculum. And we had a curriculum that was Pacific centered. We learned about the Sepik River people, we learned about PNG, we learned in social science.
Okay, yeah.
I came through that curriculum. While in here, we learned about Tonga, we learned about the Kingdom of Tonga, we learned about PNG, and so many other places. We had the stories of famous people. We had Pacific, the land and the people. These were curriculum, Pacific-centered curriculum. And in the curriculum, I think about 40% was about us, and 60% was about, the global village.
Yeah. Global village. Because you mentioned New Zealand, New Zealand curriculum. So with the New Zealand curriculum, now I understand they were influenced by the British also.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we talk about global village, our curriculum also has regional affairs, issues, and even international. Talk about geography in the upper secondary. We studied about economic development, Fiji and Japan. Agriculture. We studied about Fiji and New Zealand because they're very good with cattle grazing and all. Cheese, the New Zealand cheese and all. So these were all part of the curriculum. Just recently, the curriculum changed to be a more Fiji-centered curriculum. And but one thing that I speak now as a unionist, one thing that I have realized is that as we moved closer to having a contextualized curriculum to address the education sector, to address the everything about us in a contextualized format, it seems like that we don't have the capacity. We probably need to provide that space for more training in terms of curriculum writers and all, those that are in the curriculum unit. Because frankly speaking, I came through an education system where I could write anything, whether it's a thesis paper or a story in the magazine or a press release, whatever. But when it comes to the students who are being bred, who were born and bred out of this new curriculum, they need more support.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, in the curriculum, I'm assuming you learn a lot about, it's got to be like British history or like, what do they teach you about like European, did they teach European history as well, like with them imposing their curriculum on, or British history you learn about?
See, um, with learning about the British curriculum or learning through the British curriculum or the New Zealand curriculum, um, let me take it in a positive note. Um, it had impacted us, and we came to know more about how the British people uh, had survived over the years.
Okay.
How, in terms of politics, in terms of economy, in terms of any other thing that we can think about, as well as New Zealand, and that's something that helps us now in decision making.
Okay.
Yeah, that is on a that's on a positive note. Um, you know, when we look at the other point whereby we have gone late into knowing, in depth about us, doing research about us, and keeping and safeguarding our own history. That's another point. But then we need to get the right people of our own to be
Yeah.
sent abroad or maybe somewhere to undergo the appropriate training so that we're able to come back and get all the facts and figures about us intact.
Well, funny enough, I think what is very important, not just for Africa or African history, is very important also. See, with African history, we've always had Europeans telling our history. We have so many historians, whether they're from America, some in Africa, but there's not enough. And I think you have the same problem maybe in Fiji, possibly, where someone else always wants to tell our history and write our history, where we need to be the writers of our history. So
That's
when I
it.
so when I come to Fiji, I've already read what I need to read. Now, I'll read from many sources. Yes, I've looked at a lot of European writers. I've looked at African American writers as well, because they speak a lot on the Pacific. Some of them, Clyde Winters, Dr. Bruno Rashidi, and J. Rogers. There's certain different scholars that we've had, but it's not enough. It's not enough. Now, when I come to Fiji, my thing was to meet educated people who have self knowledge and self identity of their own culture. I met a lot of people in Fiji. People seem like, from the impression I got, people seem quite very cultural centered, which I was happy about. Also, getting to meet the chief, getting to meet the spokesman, the warrior, and we had great discussions about the connections come from Lake Tanganyika. And there was a book that I was told about called The Legend. The Legend. I'm not sure if you've heard of that book. I'm not sure who even wrote the book, but I was told about The Legend. I had a read of it though. I did have a read of it. Have you heard of The Legend?
No.
Right. This is like the story of, well, it's put together about Fiji, the connection I've come from Africa. It was actually a man called Kelly who worked at the First Landed who told me about this book. So I've had a read of it online. and there's a lot of speculation about the connection with Africa. And then there's other things in there which are interesting. But at the same time, I like to go straight to the source, and that's why I wanted to speak to as many different Fijian people as possible. Now, it doesn't mean just because I've spoke to some Fijian people that I have all the answers, because different people have different levels of knowledge, you know. So with you having connected to teachers in maybe many different areas, history, social politics, and different aspects of knowledge. So that's why I was happy to get you on, and I'm sure that you also know some people as well who may have great knowledge on these topics when I was discussing about Africa. So it's interesting to know that your own history is very important to know. And African history, another one, is very vast. It's a massive continent. They had great contributions to many places in the world. The Greeks wouldn't have their history. The Romans wouldn't have their history. They all came,
James,
so
time has traveled so fast,
yeah,
that most indigenous people like us,
yeah,
we are quite late and behind in shaping our future in
definitely,
terms of our own affairs.
yeah,
And this is due to so much of the British influence, due to the coming in of the indentured system. We were driven into a multicultural kind of mentality,
yeah,
whereby we were fed with information, we were groomed to care about all the races here, all the
yeah,
races.
yeah,
And we in the process we lost touch with our own indigenous affairs. And there
definitely,
was little focus on that. In my opinion, there was little focus on that. And as I said, the time has traveled so fast. We have done so little to ensure that we survive. Because, say for example, with due respect to the Indian community that we have here in Fiji, they are just a little fraction of the Indian population and their culture and all that's here. The parent body, the parent community is there in India.
yes, that's right.
And they have sustained, they have the degree of resilience in terms of their own affairs. They are quite high, it's quite high.
Definitely, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Whereas with us, with the indigenous people of Fiji, we are just here in Fiji. There's no other place in the world. You will find Fijians. You will find the indigenous people of Fiji. Like in Africa, you may have Africa in the US, right? The African Americans. You may have Africans in the UK and elsewhere, but you still have the parent home that's there.
That's right.
In Africa. You got my point?
Yeah.
Yeah. But for us, we may call our roots way back in Tanganyika. But how sure are we, and how have we, over the years, tried to link us back to Tanganyika, and how much have we done in terms of its connections to have it, there in black and white?
That's very important what you've just mentioned then, because what's very important is the connection with Fiji and Africa even with the whole of Melanesia, because with Africa as well, there's a lot of not so much Egypt. Egypt has a lot of artifacts. It has a lot of all sorts of museums. But you see, North Africa was one time Black African people. It's been heavily invaded over the years by many different people, like the Arabs, the Greeks, the Romans, and many other peoples. So North Africa has been pretty much taken by other people. South Africa has been taken by the Dutch, and also the British at times, and other Europeans have gone there. The Portuguese first went there. And the colonialism in Africa is very strong as well. Now, even though we call for independence, independence is taken lightly because independent really means that you should be free and independent to sustain yourselves and not rely on other aid from other places, and where people can just come over to your country and the red carpet is rolled out on them. This is the problem I see in Africa. I see this in the Pacific. I see this in Australia. The Aboriginal Australian, they are not even recognized. When I visited Australia, and most of them are really treated like animals in Australia, the Aborigines, and nothing's really changed. You might have little political people coming through and that, but it's not good enough. They're not recognized, and at the same time, the racial profile and things like that.
I think I agree with you, James, to some degree. Maybe not 100% commitment
Yeah,
in terms of the Aborigines in Australia.
yeah,
Although they have tried their best, they have tried their best to have an education system that is taken right to their doorsteps in the various, because they are like they move. They have they a kind of people that they are just uncontrollable.
yeah.
When the Aborigines, they have a certain time that they want to be in the classroom. After that, they would go, they would move.
We're still suffering from
So
colonialism. Still, that's the
yeah,
problem.
so exactly. So the what I have come to know is that they through unionism is that they have the government of Australia has tried to take the education system right to their doorstep, and has created some kind of, yeah. But I think it's going to take time
Yeah,
for them to catch up.
yeah,
And but for us in Fiji, though most of the indigenous people are in the white collar, maybe white collar jobs, but the skilled ones and they are positions where most of them are not in on those positions
yeah,
because of the need for high level qualified people.
yeah.
So yeah, so yes, it's so
This,
sad that that is the situation. But then I appreciate the fact that out of the many in the world, you have chosen to discuss this in a forum such as this, James. Yeah.
well, what it is my field of research. I don't have a qualification. I don't need one in order to speak about our history or to speak about indigenous peoples around the world. My focus is on the Black world, and the Black world. I see so much similarities. So when I can go to Australia, I can go to Fiji, I can go to, even when I've been to Hawaii, for example, I've seen what happened to the dark skinned original Hawaiians. I've seen
Mm.
that colorism has been a big problem around this world. The lighter you are, they want to more accept you. And it's another way of destroying indigenous knowledge and indigenous peoples. So they use integration, like you mentioned before, but they use it in a way to destroy the original. Now, if people want to integrate, fair enough, but when it's forced upon or used economically, there's many ways how you can break someone's culture. Even bringing in your religion into the country, telling them, demonizing your own spirituality or your own your connection to the ancestors. They say, oh, that's all bad. So it's basically resistance that we need. So this is why I connected to the Black world. Now, before I came to the Fiji Islands, I did a lot of research on it. I was always very curious of Fiji. I was curious of the whole Pacific, to be honest. Something allowed me to come to Fiji, and it was like, well, I'm very spiritual, you see, as well. I do believe in like things happen for a reason, and there was a reason why I came to Fiji. Even before I came to Fiji, I had feelings I was going to meet someone of importance, and then I ended up connecting with the chief. So I've always been deep from very young. I've always asked a lot of questions. I've always been inquisitive. And when I was young as a child, I had a globe. My mum bought me a globe of the world, the maps. So I've always like analyzed this planet, and we can go wherever we want on this planet. We need to travel to learn, travel and really open my mind up. So these are the important things. And Fijian people, the reason why I came back twice, because I felt a deep, strong connection with you. And this is why I will make a third trip at some point to Fiji, and hopefully this time I can connect with a lot of teachers like yourself, and meet other people along the way of high, great knowledge. So that's very important.
I think, James, we think alike.
Yeah,
I've always had indigenous issues in my heart and in my brain.
yeah,
And at one stage, I had even gone into planning on the structures, structuring a non-government organization, an NGO.
yeah,
But then I had planned that, I think, for the last 20 years, when I was, or more than 20 years ago, when I was still in the classroom, and I had found out, I had identified the differences in the way students who entered the classroom, in the differences that I could see in the way they had been groomed,
yeah.
in terms of their background, their family.
So like you were saying about being independent, non-government influence on how we're going to teach our future generations.
Yeah, James, I had earlier stated that um, we cannot really influence the way an elected government operates, and how it and its perception on the indigenous population, indigenous culture, safeguarding its interests. But I was thinking about, at one stage, I was thinking about going out of work and establish a non-government organization that would stand for and advocate, run awareness advocacy programs, maybe develop a big archives for indigenous history here in Fiji, and develop research a unit, to have established a unit, an institute that looks into the connections that we had just discussed.
Yeah, definitely.
To recap history of the ships that came from Tanganyika, the ones that capsized, and all this kind of history and historical information. But the problem was, at the time, I think I was just 15 years into teaching. I was just a classroom teacher. I had developed this already in my mind. And because I was teaching in the classroom, those indigenous vernacular information in the curriculum, and I was concerned about preserving them. And also, looking at sustainability and how resilient we can be in safeguarding all this information. Say, for example, canoe makers, canoe builders.
Yeah.
The Ndrua, you probably know about the Fiji team, the Ndrua. How these canoes, the Ndrua, how can it be, how can the builders be groomed further, or how can they, how can we, at least pay for training so that they pass on their skills to the next generation and the next. Some people say it's inherited, but how sure are we that the other generation can inherit? Because most of these children, when they are born with laptops and gadgets
iPhones,
such as these.
smartphones, and
They're onto social media. And most go on games. So that is some of the thing. That is one thing that I had thought of. But the problem that I faced back those years was the funding. Whether if I that established. Because at that time, with a little sum of money, I could establish one with a few other people. But then I had about three that we shared the idea. They were also teachers. But the problem now is out of the three, two have passed on. So only one, and myself and I, we are the surviving members of that small group that we did discuss at one time.
Yeah, it's difficult with the younger generation,
Yeah.
A lot of distraction for them as well. Very distracted.
Yeah. Like what I've said, we can't influence or tell the government, any elected government, please work on this and do this for the indigenous people. But we could take the other option, which I think is the better one, establish a non-government organization and preach about it. Talk about it. Get the funding from abroad or from somewhere and get it done. A small unit, get researchers to research on. We have so much on that we think about, but the problem is, having these finances and all.
Yeah, definitely. I totally understand where you're coming from. It has to be free from government. It has to be independent. Now, it's also about see the technology. We're having a conversation over the internet. We're making good use out of this with this conversation. We're doing this is an international discussion, and I like to connect with to Black people wherever we are in this world. So because our struggle is very different than any others. We all seem to face the same problems wherever we go. Things might be slightly different in terms of populations, but outside of that, we're always kept at the bottom all over the world, everywhere I look. I travel a lot of countries as well, so I see it when I travel. I've read about it. It's living proof of the environment where we grow up, everything. Everyone else seems to have the businesses, even like where I'm from in the UK, in the neighborhoods, which is predominantly Black people, we don't own majority of the businesses. We don't own majority of the houses. It's real bad. And we make up a lot of numbers that end up in the prisons. We need more of us to, yes, go to university, go to college, but at the same time, what we really need is a connection to. We need to be more conscious of who we are and the environment where we are originally from, because a lot of people in the UK, or especially America, have kind of disconnected themselves from their mother continent of Africa. So this is why we try to teach, we try to speak about the positive things about African history, because all we hear about African history is they went through the slave trade, Africa needs help, everybody's starving, all the negative things we hear. So this is why we started learning about a lot of different places, royalty in Africa, African spirituality, Africa having a real rich civilization, a land of a lot of resources that we're not fully in control of because other people from Europe or whatever have took control of Africa. So this is when people celebrate Independence Day. You have to not take that word independence lightly, because independence is where you're free. You're free to teach what you want. You're free from, you should be a connection with your own government, where your own government wants to be free from the British, from whoever else. And that to me is true independence, when you don't have to look at your Europeans to be able to help with this, help with that. Yes, there's nothing wrong with having a connection with anyone in the world. But when someone wants to take control of your curriculum or your resources or your education, that is where we got to put a stop to that. Definitely. Now, with the younger generations now, do you feel that like a lot of them straying away from the true Fijian culture, tradition, or is it still strong? How would you put it? You sound just gone off. Yeah,
We're fortunate in Fiji that we still have our. That's one plus, one good thing about what the British did, keeping us in our own communal setup, in our own village. I should acknowledge that and say that we are fortunate in Fiji that we still have the village traditional setup. But how every village has maintained its culture and everything that needs everything about its indigenous affairs. I'm not sure how they have, gone, how far they have gone in terms of safeguarding them.
yeah,
But evidently what we can see is that villages still exist. Some villages still have the tribal system in terms of the chiefs, the heralds, the kingmakers, and all. Some have moved to new villages. Some have moved to their own clan piece of land, and how they have survived there in terms of their culture, how they have safeguarded them, I'm not pretty sure. But the point is, if we do not now to do something big about safeguarding the indigenous culture and indigenous interests, then we might lose everything soon into the future. In terms of, as I've said, gadgets such as these social media, about 90% of school children focus on social media.
Yeah.
Going through TikTok and all those other aspects of social media. Who would ever choose to know about oral traditions, to go through social media and check on oral traditions?
Yeah.
I think so. We have that in Fiji, in other indigenous communities around the world. Because most of them, they go into contemporary arts, contemporary music, and all those other stuff. Jazz and all, jazz band and So with emphasis, with focus on Fiji, James, I think there's a need for us to really look into that. Safeguarding our indigenous interests and culture and all, as we had been talking about it. That is why I fully appreciate this program, because I know it's going to be viewed internationally, and there could be people in the international stage who would be, ready to assist where they can practically offer their assistance.
Yeah. Well, there's like different ideas I have also. Like, for example, I spoke to someone from West Africa. I had discussions with him. He's from Burkina Faso. And he is actually working out in New Caledonia at the moment. He teaches philosophy and he's from West Africa. And what he done is he was in Fiji several months ago. I have never met this person in my life. He messaged me because he is on there's a Facebook page called In Museums and Tombs. It's Renoka Rashidi. He's passed away now, but there's a Facebook page which would be interesting to join. He posts, there's a lot of things about Fiji he was posting and other indigenous peoples. I'll invite you to the page on Facebook. Now, he got in touch
What's the
with
page
me.
again?
In
What's the page
museums,
again?
in museums and tombs. Dr. Renoka Rashidi. I'll just get it up
In
now.
museums?
Yeah, yes, okay, let me get up. Yeah, in the museums, tombs, galleries, temples with Renoka Rashidi. And you'll see a picture of Renoka Rashidi. This is there, I don't know if you can see it.
In the museums, tombs?
Yeah, galleries and temples with Renoka Rashidi. That's definitely a page for you to follow and engage with the people. You know, that's one thing. It's got like 72,000 followers, members. So it's definitely worth connecting with that. And also, at the same time, yeah, so I was saying before, there's a brother there from Burkina Faso who he went to Fiji and I'd never met him before, and only because he's on this page and I used to post a lot of stuff about Fiji myself.
So it's Dr. Runoko Rashidi?
That's right, yeah. He's been to Fiji twice as well. Definitely follow that page, definitely. And people would appreciate you on there because people are very curious about the South Pacific. You know, people are very, you'd be surprised on how people view the Pacific Islands, especially Fiji, and the fact that people are starting to learn more about your connections with Africa, and it's making people more curious. And because you're such a far away island, and we don't really hear too much about Fiji, so that's very important. But he's a person anyway. He's great to follow. He passed away several years ago, but it'd be definitely worth it to join that page anyway. Did you find it?
Yeah, I've joined.
Good. Yeah, so feel free to post on it also, and just explain that you're from the Fiji Islands, and I think you'll get a great response once you tell them where you're from as well. So that's like a start. Those things. Another thing is I want to start setting up a certain, whether it's a Facebook or social media group, where we can connect with the people from the Pacific, people in Africa, people from the United States, people globally, and I think that is like a how we can bridge the gap, because we need to come together. If we don't come together, then there'll always be that distance, So it's only so many people who, like, not all Fijians might have that interest like you do, and not all people from where I'm from have that same interest too, So it's just about connecting with like-minded people. Like-minded people from different places have to connect, and this is what's very important. But I'm going to ask you also about your connection with other places in the Pacific Islands as well. So nearby places, whether it's in Polynesia, Micronesia. I understand you said about Melanesia, you have that connection. Now, what about Polynesia and Micronesia? Do you have? What's the connection with Fiji?
All right. Well, with me, I am connected by blood to the Polynesian Kingdom of Tonga.
Yeah.
I have blood connections on the village of Pea, that's in Tonga, because two of my grandparents, my great grandparent and my great great grandparent, grandmother, they were both Tongans. This
Okay.
is on my This is on my maternal side.
Yeah.
They're both from Tonga.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm connected to the Polynesian community. And in terms of the entire Fiji indigenous people in Fiji, we have Tongan influence. We have the Tongan influence, the Samoan influence, the Polynesian influence, mostly in the Tobata Confederacy. When I talk about Tobata Confederacy, I'm referring to the Lau Group, which is one of the 14 provinces, plus the next bigger island that's on Vanuatu, the other island.
Okay.
Yeah, the influence came through them, and through them, most women connections of the Polynesian world came into the highlands of Vitilevu, and there are families as well on Vitilevu that who have blood ties and connections with the Polynesian states, Polynesian countries in the South Pacific. In terms of connections, in terms of education, in terms of indigenous culture, yes, we are connected with the Polynesian people. Most of the connections can be evident in the way they perform oral traditions in terms of dances and, for example, a girl in the highland of Vitilevu, a girl in the highlands of Fiji, who is able to perform the hula dance from Tonga or Samoa. You know that Samoan Tongan dance?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. For girls, yeah. If a girl from the highlands of Vitilevu is able to do that, do that without a mistake, do that to perform sincerely, then the person must have some kind of connection to the Polynesian community.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, because it's there in the blood, eh?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing I seen in Tonga is I like, old megalithic sites and things like that. I got to go to the Stonehenge there. Now, we would say Stonehenge speaking in English, but I think it's called Maui or something like that. And he also visited the three-step pyramid, the burial for the royalty. So it was very interesting to see that they have a Stonehenge the same way. Over here in the UK, we have Stonehenge too. You know, the Stonehenge in Tonga is a lot better. It looks more stronger. Like the shape of a goal post or something. But it was amazing to see the ancient megalithic sites and the structures and three-step pyramid and even the word pyramid. There's pyramids all over the world. Obviously Egypt's one stand out the most, but it's the fact that ideas share around the world. Mexico has pyramids. There's pyramids in many places in the world, even places that they don't even talk about. So I was like happy to see these things in Tonga. Now, another thing also, drinking kava in Fiji.
Yes.
I drank a lot of kava when I was in Fiji. I was a little bit lightheaded because I was, after drinking, I think I drank 4 at a time. That was enough for me. But some people could drink it all night.
Oh, yes. Kava, I don't know. I think that kind of informal gathering where kava is used, probably something that we are not. It's not African, right?
No, no,
It's
no.
no. Yeah, that's something that we acquired from our Pacific neighbors.
Right.
Yeah. History says that it probably came from Tonga, probably came from other Pacific Island states.
Yeah.
Due to the interaction of the past years. over the years.
Yeah.
And yes, indigenous people. This is one of the things, frankly speaking, this is one of the things that really keeps them together in terms of their village communal setup. There's no other place in Fiji. You'd probably agree with me, James. There is no other place in the world that you will find people who are really relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fiji would be
They
best
don't
place
bother about.
in the Pacific.
They don't
Fiji would
bother
be
about.
the best place I visited in the Pacific. Definitely. Fiji, even like I prefer Fiji than even Tonga, than Micronesia, and also even Hawaii. I thought Fiji was the best place and really relaxed people, So I was really happy. That's why I'll always go back there. And I had a strong connection, and they embraced
Yeah.
me very well. I really got on with
Yes.
Fijians,
Yes.
You
You enter a Fijian village.
Yeah.
They know that that a person of indigenous color of the skin.
Yeah.
They can be with you. They can disregard the engagement for the entire day and be there.
Yeah.
You drink cover with the person till afternoon. They're so relaxed.
Yeah.
They don't bother about the time. They don't bother about, this is something that's in terms of the Western world, when we are trying to go ahead with time and achieve more in life, this is something that's really drawing us back.
Definitely.
But in terms of being an indigenous, relaxing in the country of your birth and citizenship, that is something that's different about Fiji. Well,
when I first went to meet the chief, when I was I was taken round, and when I first met the spokesman, he said to the person who brought me, how come he's brought people from Fiji? He thought I was Fijian. So he had to explain, no, these are from the UK, but he has Nigerian roots. So they actually thought I was from Fiji when he brought me, until he had to explain. So that was interesting, because we have like a similar color, so yeah. But interesting though, because like I say, I was always pure curious, and the connection was very powerful in Fiji. That's why I went back twice, and I met the chief twice. The second time I met him at the First Land Hotel, and got another picture with them, had a little quick talk with them, and it was just like it was like it was all meant to be.
So for the second trip, you came again to the first landing?
Yes, yeah. For some reason I keep going back to that hotel. I keep going back to the hotel. But next time maybe I will stay at the First Land, but I'll stay somewhere else as well.
Yeah, you're welcome. You can come to this side of Fiji, this side of the main island. Yeah.
Okay, so how far are you from First London?
Well, I am on the opposite side. I'm on the eastern side.
How far drive would that be?
4 hours drive.
Okay.
4 hours drive. Yeah.
Okay.
I had served in Lautoka, where Vunda is, where VCC is, the second city.
Okay.
It's referred to in Fiji as a sugar city.
Okay.
Yeah. I served there as an education officer at the Lautoka Education Office.
Wow.
Yeah, I was there for 2 years.
Okay.
That was before Winston, before Tropical Cyclone Winston in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, and I lived in Lautoka at the government quarters. So because I was an education officer looking after more than 50 primary schools, quite a number of secondary schools in Lautoka and Nandi, and kindergarten as well. So I had to stay there.
So were you in?
before my transfer with this side. But I am originally from this end. Yes, come again?
Are you? So were you from Nadi or outside Nadi?
No, I'm not. I'm from the eastern side. I'm from this side.
So if you get a flight into Fiji, for example, because I got a flight into Nadi Airport,
Yeah,
then we
yeah.
drove to the first land and maybe took. It didn't take a long time anyway. So, which flight are you best getting into to visit where you're from? Would you fly to Nadi or
You'll
Suva?
go from to Suva. You'll go from Nandi to Suva.
Okay, right. So you're more close to
Yeah.
Suva than Nadi.
I am right now in Suva.
Oh, okay, Suva, the big city.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't go that part, Suva, but I would like to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you probably need to uh, lengthen your stay in Fiji,
Yeah,
stay a little longer, because I will have to take you to the highlands and
yeah.
other places, some sacred places for you to view certain things, like what I had shared with you in our previous episode about that cave in the Asawas.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting. Love to see that.
yeah. So and get to know your people who have left Africa
That's it.
many ages ago and are on this side of the world.
Yeah, well, this is great because I mean, it's one thing to go to Nadi twice, but I would like to see the other part of Fiji as well. Suva, and there's about 333 islands in Fiji, isn't it? About that
Yes,
333. Not sure how many is
yes,
occupied. How many islands are occupied? Because you've got like there's a lot of islands there. I think you're breaking up again. Yeah, he's back on. Yeah, yeah, a lot of islands. You have, I was saying.
yeah.
How many islands are occupied?
We have more than 300 islands in Fiji. Um, we have quite many occupied. We have the big island of Vitilevu, and then the next big island is Vololevu, and we have those smaller islands in different sizes, which is Kandavu in the south. We have Ngau. We have the first capital that's on the island of Ovalau, the
Hmm.
first capital of Fiji, where the British had established their headquarters, is on the island of Ovalau. Yeah, where Fiji was ceded to Great Britain. I think you
Okay.
have not visited that place. Yeah, they have a particular area where Fiji was ceded to Great Britain.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so now you were talking about I'm interested in this new curriculum. Has it
Yeah.
begun, this new curriculum to bring back Fijian culture? How's it going?
Yeah, with the new elected coalition government, they are more into the indigenous affairs of the
Great.
nation. We have just finished with our national education summit, and one of the interesting topics that they discussed was indigenizing most of um the education sector,
Okay.
meaning that we need to add on indigenous influence into the education sector so that even if they are from the other races, they need to know more about the indigenous information, about the
Yes.
indigenous culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we are heading in the right direction. Um, we just need the support of the continuous and consistent support of government to ensure that even if there at one stage there was a plan for an indigenous curriculum. I don't know how far this has gone. It went up to the education summit uh, for every child that enters the school system should also be taken through the indigenous curriculum, and that be a part of the curriculum coverage in the classroom.
Very important. Yeah, because the younger generations, it's very important that because they're the future, nothing worse to lose traditions and cultures through whether it's because of people are following other things on social media or getting fed brainwashed stuff from others outside, people bringing in trying to influence negativity. And so it's very important, and it's nice when you can travel different places and you can find indigenous cultures. I mean, I'm through going into places in Asia. I've had to go into the rainforest to find indigenous peoples. Some of them are 7-hour drives, 8-hour drives. But it was definitely worth it to find surviving indigenous cultures still thriving, even though numbers are declining. And that's what we've always got to be careful of, declining, because integration's pushed a lot on our people. So I'm sure that happens with you saying you might get, outsiders wanting to marry into your people, indigenous peoples, and then once outsiders come in, they start trying to teach their history, and then it starts watering down generation after generation. So
Exactly.
you've got to have self-love, self-respect, and self-dignity in order to continue and respect your own traditions. And each generation needs to respect it and not forget it. This is what I'm trying to do with African culture, African history. I've about to do it through podcast shows. I'm about to do it through traveling to Africa myself and traveling different places where Black people are in the world. I don't get funding. I just do it off my own back because I don't want to wait for something. Now, don't get me wrong. If funding is there, that's great. But at the same time, always be independent and try to do what you can. So I just do my show for free, for example, but I'm getting a few people starting to follow what I'm doing around the world. I'm also getting guests on from different places in the world, which is great. And it's all about people coming together, share the knowledge, and hopefully, like you say, you never know who's listening to your discussions, and some people might find interesting someone who can take you to other avenues to promote your culture. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope this works out good, and together, we can do things together. We can promote things together. We have social media, so take the positive from social media. All the negative social media, we leave that alone. We don't even bother with that.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add on? Would you like to?
Yeah. The only thing that I need to I wanted to share just before we wrap up with our program, James, is that number one, I must thank you and acknowledge the fact that we have officially connected now in terms of Fiji and the interests that's there already. And I think we think alike on that ground. And secondly is that how better can we mobilize a group or I'm looking at establishing something in Fiji in terms of like what I had shared, the non-government organization or that can advocate more on indigenous affairs, because right here in Fiji we have only the women's non-government organization, the girls and the children, and we have climate change and other, but there's nothing at all on indigenous people.
Yeah.
That is something that I'm always concerned about. There is nothing on indigenous people in terms of non-government where we can advocate,
make it impact on
it. Fight for and get louder to be heard.
I believe the best way to do it would be to connect with other indigenous groups around the world as well. you know, whether it's people in the Pacific, Melanesia, you know, that's powerful together. And also connecting with Africa, because people in Africa are, you know, they're learning still, even though you see, because I've spoke to a lot of Africans who, and some of them, they might follow today's culture. Some of them don't know about the ancient history, you know, some do, but there's a lot who don't also. So this is why it's important to speak to, I try to speak to as many people as I can, which is very important, you know. So definitely it's very important that indigenous interest is very important. I think we got to look at solutions to tackle any barriers that we face, you know. So this is something that I've took an interest in it like for the past 20 years, indigenous peoples, African history, and making connections, similarities. So I do believe that yeah, you want to establish something that is based in Fiji, but you must also, in order to get the people to follow, try to connect with other indigenous groups around the world. You know, maybe you start off small, then you build up your following. What do you think?
Good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah, you know, so any
Uh,
assistance I can do, you know,
The basic thing,
yeah,
I think, James, the basic thing is probably to connect, eh?
it's connecting
To
very
connect
important,
because yeah,
you know.
the this is a credible. It's a credible initiative because it's about us, the indigenous people of the world,
Yes, yeah,
and I think it's about time. Maybe we have started. Most of us, wherever we are in the world, we probably have started on a small scale, trying to strengthen and put our hands together, resources together. And I think it's probably important that we do something, something much stronger. Eh?
definitely.
We in the Pacific we have the Melanesian Spearhead Group, which is a regional body and has bilateral relations, has established bilateral relations, trade talks, and all these things. But how has this body gone down to the grassroots? Is another point that we've yet uh, to know how far they have gone and what have they been able to achieve. Because the, the the misconnection, the missing link, there's a gap. So we don't know what really is happening with the indigenous people.
Well, I think a good place to start, obviously, of course, in your own country. At the same time, make the connection stronger with Melanesians. It'd be great you could make it strong with all of the Pacific, but I think with Melanesia, it's the more stronger indigenous roots. You know, that's what it seems anyway. So, and indigenous, like, you know, it's connecting with other indigenous groups also around the world, whether it's the Aboriginal Australians. You've got indigenous groups in Asia as well, even in India. Now, India is a very interesting place because a lot of the Indians that are being brought over to Fiji or they're being brought over to, you know, they are like, because you have so many of these castes in India, you know, the maybe like eight caste or something like that. But there's actually black people indigenous to India, and we don't really see them much, you know. They have like a caste system problem where they favor the lighter people. So when they have what's it called, Bollywood or whatever they like to cast the lighter skinned peoples, you know. So this is why we have to do the opposition. We have to show the most indigenous peoples around the world. This is what I do. I presented PowerPoints, slideshows, done travels with it, and you know, I try to connect with the youth. I use my podcast platform to be able to connect internationally. So it's very important that we make these connections. And yes, I don't mind assisting with some of these things. You know, different people I know across different places in the world, where I think we should also put like a group together. If you want to base it in Fiji, that's fine. And we make sure that we get members connected to the group, but we must interact with each other. If there's no interaction, then people will just get sidetracked and go about the business and all that. Now, what I did do about a year ago, well, less than a year, I did a documentary. I had a lot of people, different people on, some from America, some from South Africa, some from the UK, Black people. Now, what I did on my part of the documentary, I'll send you the documentary. I showed actually a lot of pictures of Fijians. I showed a lot of pictures of different Black people that I've visited in the world and explained some of the traditions and some of the discussions I had with people. So I think it'd be good if I do a part 2 documentary, and feel free to be a part of it. So, for example, all you would have to do is send me a video of yourself. I'll give you a list of questions or something. You record yourself, send me the video, and then we can put a documentary together, you know, with different people from around the world. That's definitely what my mission is for part 2 of the documentary. It's actually called Original People, the documentary. So
Original People.
Yeah. And we have a Facebook page, Original Peoples as well. So we've got to make, as long as we're making these connections, and I'll invite you to the page anyway, and then it'd be good for you to interact with people on the group, you know. So this is where we've got to start. We've got to make the connections, use social media, take the positive out of it, and engage with the guest, with all the members. It's like I engage with the Facebook page about the Fijians, how me and you got to meet each other, you know, and I really appreciate you responding to me, because I sent a message onto the page about Lake Tanganyika, the connections. Some people agreed. Some people said it's a lie, and this, and there's many different opinions, but I still didn't give up on making my point. And I was happy that you reached out to me, which I appreciate. You definitely are connected to the ancestors strongly to be able to message me. And because if you didn't message me,
because
we wouldn't be having this discussion now.
You see, James, that's something that I had said earlier on. It is something that's always close to my chest. The indigenous cause, the indigenous interests.
So it's great that you messaged me, because if you wouldn't have messaged me, we wouldn't have been having this discussion now. So I give thanks for you messaging me, you know, so
thank you.
I appreciate that. And then, you know, this has been a great discussion anyway. You know, this is James Diboe, Discovering, dedicated to Original Peoples. And we will do a part 3, and we will come up with other ideas and other ventures to be able to make these connections to Indigenous cultures globally, internationally, you know. So I give thanks anyway, Maika Moroca. I struggle to say your name. Moroca, that's her name, sorry. You know, but I give thanks, my brother. And we will do a part 3, because what we'll do, we'll make these connections.
Thank you.
We'll keep making the connections. And I look forward to speaking to you and connecting with you in the future. And hopefully I will travel to Fiji again for my third trip, and I'll come and stay by where you are, your side.
You're most welcome. Most welcome.
And I give thanks, and I'll leave you to get on with your day and enjoy your day. Have a great morning. It's morning time where you are. It's evening time here.
Likewise. A very blessed day to you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, brother. You take it easy. Peace.